When we were kids, the grocery store wasn't the main event. It was a backup plan. The real food? That came from people. Actual people with names and faces and often aprons. We didn't think about brands or barcodes. We just knew that milk showed up at the front door and eggs came in a reused cardboard carton with the name Joanne written on the side in blue ballpoint pen. We didn't ask where food came from because we already knew. It came from the milkman, the egg lady, and the garden in the backyard. Before oat milk, almond milk, and milk made from things that shouldn't produce milk, there was just milk. And it arrived like clockwork, in glass bottles so cold they'd sweat before you even brought them inside. Every house had the little metal box on the porch. That was sacred territory. We didn't mess with it. That box was where the good stuff lived. We'd wake up, open the front door, and there it was. 2 bottles of milk, maybe some chocolate milk if it was a special week, and once, a container of orange juice that felt like pure luxury. And the milkman? We didn't know his name. He was just the milkman. Cooler than Santa Claus because he showed up twice a week. He had white pants, a cap, and an actual milk truck that made the softest rattle down the street like a promise. There was always an egg lady in every neighborhood. Sometimes she lived 2 doors down, sometimes she was your mother's friend from church, but she always had chickens, and she always had eggs. You didn't buy them, you just sort of got them in exchange for something. A zucchini from your garden, a batch of cookies, helping her move a couch once. It was an unofficial barter system of suburban survival. She'd walk over with a carton, hand it to your mom, and say something like, "They're still warm. I just pulled them this morning." We'd peek inside and whisper, "They're still warm? From where?" She'd laugh and say, "From the girls, of course." We assume the girls meant chickens. We'd hope. If you didn't grow it, your neighbor did, or your grandmother did, or your dad made you help dig the rows while he yelled about learning discipline. We had more tomatoes than we knew what to do with, so we gave them away like we were running a produce stand. You often hear phrases like, "Please take the zucchinis, we're drowning in them," or, "I found this in the garden, do you know what it is?" "Nope, boil it and see what happens." Half of our summer was spent shelling peas or snapping beans on the porch while trying not to fall asleep mid-task. Before there were Costco-sized jars of pickles and enough granola bars to survive a snowstorm, we had rows of mason jars lining every shelf. Pickled everything: beets, beans, peppers. Mystery jams with handwritten labels that just said things like apricot, maybe. We canned everything. And if your mom didn't can things, your aunt did, or your neighbor, or someone who brought over a box full of jars and said, "We had too much this year, thought you could use some." They'd always use the word "some" when they meant 20 pounds. If you were lucky enough to have a deep freezer, it was basically a meat crypt. You didn't go in there without a guide. You lift the lid and stare down at white paper-wrapped mystery parcels labeled in faded Sharpie. You might see labels that said roasted, or maybe stew meat, or even, "Is this chicken?" Once a year, someone's cousin or uncle knew a guy who was selling half a cow, and before you knew it, you had 47 pounds of beef in your garage. It was just how it worked. The butcher had a name, and sometimes the cow also did too. There was no delivery app, no overnight shipping, no pre-washed lettuce in a bag. Food didn't have a logo, it had a face. A person, a neighbor, sometimes a stranger who showed up at your door with eggs and left with a jar of applesauce. and somehow it tasted better. And you know what? We didn't grow up confused. We grew up connected to where our food came from, to who gave it to us, and to each other. We didn't need fancy packaging or commercials. We had the milkman, we had the egg lady, and we had a whole lot of zucchinis we didn't ask for, but learned to love anyway.